Susan Gardner here for Municipal World. We're at the wrap-up of the 2019 Transforming Local Government Conference in Reno, Nevada. Joining me in the Media Center is the final keynote speaker for the event, Katie Hazard from Burning Man.
Yeah.
You did a fantastic presentation, and I thought it would be great if you could maybe come in and talk a little bit about Burning Man for folks who don't know what that is, and then we'll talk about some of the connections for cities.
So Burning Man has been going for 33 years. It's a temporary event that happens in the Black Rock Desert in northern Nevada. About 75,000 people come for 8 days. And we're a nonprofit organization. So aside from doing the work we do at the Burning Man event, we have activities that go on year-round around the globe.
Wow. So 75,000 people that come out to the desert, and you set up a city, essentially.
We do. It's really a fully functioning city. It has, post offices and medical clinics, and there's an airport that's licensed by the FAA, and there's a whole range of what you would expect in a typical city. Although what's a little different there is that the Burning Man organization creates all that infrastructure, the roads and the airport and that kind of thing, and the 75,000 participants that come create all of the content. They bring what they want to see. So we don't have a main stage, we don't book any DJs or commission any art. Everything comes based on what people want to dream up in this big open landscape.
That's crazy. So how long does it take Burning Man to set up the infrastructure part for people to come in?
Well, we start working more than a year in advance on the following year. So I'm already making plans for the 2020 event. So there's, the longer term. Also, even longer term, we have a 100-year plan, the Burning Man project. So, you can look really long scale.
Oh,
yeah.
That's fantastic.
But in the actual space of the desert, we arrive about 3 weeks before the rest of the participants come. We do a survey of the whole city. We lay the roads out. The biggest art installations, those artists come in and start building a couple of weeks ahead of time. So just a few weeks. It's held on federal land, and so there's a limited amount of time in which we can have that space as a private event. So.
That's fantastic. So when you arrive in this space, the Playa, there's nothing there, right?
There's nothing there. And it's this beautiful, it's an ancient lake bed. So it's this big, flat expanse of white land, and then it's ringed by these black mountains. It's a stunning landscape. Huge skies, amazing stars. It's phenomenal.
So for a very short period of time, it becomes what you call Black Rock City.
That's it. Yeah, it's the third largest city in Nevada for the week that it's functional.
That's wild.
Yeah.
So, and then at the end of the event, it all goes away.
It's true. One of our main principles is leave no trace. So you might know it from some pack it in, pack it out camp places or things like that you've been to. But when we arrive, it's a big empty slate, and also when we leave. And we don't provide garbage cans. So that's a different thing too. People bring everything they need. Nothing is for sale there. And so they also have to bring with them everything that they brought in.
Wow. So there's some interesting principles, some culture there. How would you describe the culture of Burning Man?
Well, we do have 10 principles that the culture is philosophically based upon. They were written a number of years after Burning Man began, and so they were more a description of what our guidelines are for our community rather than some rules that we set. A couple that I find interesting, especially one of them is decommodification. So like I said, nothing's for sale. There are also no corporate logos. There are no sponsorships. It's a chance to have interactions with people that aren't transactional. You actually talk to strangers, and it's not because you're buying a coffee from them. It's because you want to talk to them about that cool thing you just saw over there.
That's awesome.
That's one of my favorites.
Okay, so, sorry. So some people describe the experience there as transformative. They come away feeling changed. What do you attribute that to?
That's a good question. It's true. We have a census that collects all kinds of information about the participants in Burning Man, and a lot of people report that they've had a transformational experience. And I think it's 86% of people that have a transformative experience feels like that transformation persists in the time after they leave Burning Man. And so, why is this? I think a lot of reasons. First, you're in a totally different environment than your home environment. You're bringing everything you need with you. You're coming together with a group of people to build your home, your group kitchen, your group living room, all these things that are just so different from your everyday life. There's an opportunity. People have a different sense of openness, I find, there. When you're biking around and looking at art, you can go up to an art piece, and one of the things I love about our art is that it's so interactive, and so it kind of needs people to participate with it to complete the vision of the piece. And so suddenly there's someone you don't know, and you're on the other end of a rope, and you're both pulling this thing to make a bell ring, and you have this connection in a way that you don't get to connect with strangers in regular life. Also, because participants bring all the content, I think they're much more invested in it. They really feel like it's their city. There's a sense of ownership, of civic pride that you might not have in your regular life. You just think, oh, well, someone else is going to take care of that thing over there. But at Burning Man, you see something that needs doing, and you go in there and do it. So you're activated and engaged in a way that you might not be in daily life.
You called that in your presentation a duocracy. Is that it?
Yeah,
Just do it. Something needs to be done.
Yeah,
just do
right.
it.
Be the change.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So afterwards, folks who attend, you call them burners. They kind of continue to often live out the Burning Man experience in some ways in their own communities, their own regions. So what does that look like?
Yeah, well, at this point, we have a whole global network of community members, burners. We have 280 regional contacts from around the world that kind of serve in their own community to help be a leader of the Burning Man community where they are. There are over 90 official regional Burning Man events. So when I first started going to Burning Man, I lived in Boston. And I knew a few people in Boston that went to Burning Man, but over time I met more and more people in the Boston community. And we decided, well, why don't we throw our own little camp out festival in the woods in Vermont? And so we took what we had learned at Burning Man, we applied the same 10 principles and did a much smaller version with a lot of our friends, but same thing, setting up art, setting up theme camps, and did it in a way that was really reflective of our local culture. So I think that the transformation people experience there, they want to go on and keep feeling that engaged, active self in the rest of their lives.
So Burning Man is getting a lot of attention, I think, from the public sector, specifically local governments, and you did something with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. What was that?
Well, the mayor of Reno, Hillary Sheevey, is on the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and she's the head of the culture group in that. And so she has helped us partner, help the Burning Man Project partner with the U.S. Conference of Mayors. And last year we invited 40 mayors from around the U.S. to come attend Black Rock City. So they came in, they spent a day there, we introduced them to lots of people, and we didn't want it to be, part of Burning Man is that everyone participates, and we didn't want it to feel like they were on some kind of bus and separate from all of it. So we found lots of ways to get them engaged in the community. In one place we had a whole wall that said, before I leave office, I want to, and it was a chalkboard with blank lines, and so it helps them kind of think of, what am I really trying to do with this limited time that I have here? Like, how can I really make my constituents feel the same sense of civic pride and engagement that I'm feeling here in Black Rock City?
It's fantastic, and it's not just artists, right? That attend this. It's people from all walks of.
It's true. Yeah, you get everyone. I mean, you certainly have a lot of artists. There are lots of tech entrepreneurs. There are 700 medical personnel that come and volunteer their time. There are philosophers, there are academics, there are carpenters, electricians, yoga teachers, retail store owners, librarians, really you name it. It's all walks of life.
And many of them come to volunteer too, right, to fill out some of these things.
It's true, yeah.
And I think it speaks to the power of art, creative processes to inspire and elevate people, no matter what it is they do in life. So some of that art that's created there, some of it is burned at the end of the event. What was that percentage that is?
It's about 5 to 10%. It changes year to year depending on how many. I mean, it's up to people if they want to burn it or not. So it changes year
some of
year.
it goes, some of it's disassembled and goes home with the artist. What happens to some of the other pieces? How it finds its way out into communities, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Well, ideally, we would love for things to have a life beyond Black Rock City. You know, artists put with their community, their heart and their soul and their money and everything they can into making this thing. And then it's a sad story when it just has to get put into storage and they have to pay for it to be put into storage. And so Burning Man does have a civic art program as well as a global art grant program where we can help enable some of those projects to get placed in civic settings around the world. Around the corner from where we are right now, there was a motel that was torn down, and it was just an abandoned lot, unsightly, you know, just not a nice spot. And a woman who works in the Burning Man Art Department, who lives here in Reno, saw this as an opportunity because artists need somewhere to put their work afterwards. Reno is so close to where Burning Man takes place. And so with support from Burning Man Project and the city of Reno, she was able to start the Reno Playa Art Park. And so there are about 6 installations there. It changes out every year. So artists can really bring their work literally straight from Burning Man and install it here for a year. And so they get a lot more exposure, a lot more publicity, and the citizens of Reno have an opportunity, and tourists here, to see a little bit firsthand.
Absolutely.
You know, they can interact with it, they can climb it, they can really get in there and have an experience of what it's like to be on Playa.
So one of the other aspects of this is the incorporation of art into public infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that.
So I think there are a lot of opportunities for permanent places to learn something from our temporary place. In San Francisco, we've had success in a couple different ways with something that we thought would be temporary that wound up having permanent impact. And one area of that is the idea to use public infrastructure as a way to have an art project at the same time. So we worked with an artist, Leo Villarreal, who had this idea to put lights on the Bay Bridge in San Francisco. And so raised a lot of money privately and had this approval to do 2 years to install the Bay Lights project on the Bay Bridge. Beautiful, 25,000 LEDs, twinkling, sparkling. I mean, it's really majestic to see it from the water's edge there. And it was so popular that it became now a permanent installation. In that 2-year temporary period, they estimate that 50 million people viewed it and that it brought in 100 million in tourist revenue. So for reasons like that, what we experimented with on a temporary basis turns out to now be able to have a permanent opportunity.
That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And it really drives home that piece too about, you know, the Burning Man having that ability to influence and share out the public art in a way that is inspiration and benefit to everyone.
And it affects people that have no idea what Burning Man even is.
That's
you
right.
know, they just get to have this lovely experience of seeing the twinkling lights at nighttime over the bay.
Yeah. So that must be really rewarding for the folks at Burning Man.
It's gratifying.
Too.
Yeah.
Okay. So lessons, because it's one of the things obviously people are talking about. What are the lessons from this city that goes up very quickly, is very collaborative, based on kind of this different philosophy of civic engagement, civic involvement, and all that. What are the lessons, do you think?
I see 3 areas where of attributes that are really alive and flourishing in Black Rock City that people could apply to their more permanent community. I think collaboration is so important, to have community-driven solutions, to have people as involved and invested as they can be, so there's a sense of ownership. The second thing I think is really important is honoring creativity. Self-expression does great things for people, right? It's fun, it's interesting, it's good for problem-solving skills. Like, there are so many ways why being creative is healthy. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Make sure artists can stay living in the city, have permanent places for them to own so they don't get pushed out to the edges. Yes. And then I think the third attribute that I think is really relevant is our willing to be experimental. This conference has been all about innovation, and I see lots of fantastic examples happening around the world, and a lot from Burning Man too, that we aren't afraid of failure. In fact, that's a normal part of the process. And so if you come to Burning Man and you try to build something and it doesn't work, it's not failure. It's, okay, well, that was step 1, you know,
We've
come
learned
back at
something.
it again. Yeah.
Yes.
And so to keep trying. So I think this idea of prototyping, of having an open mind, of being experimental is really key.
Okay.
One last thing I want to point out is that, Burning Man community members are really all over the world. So wherever you live, wherever you are, it's worth your time to connect with that community. They're likely to be doing really interesting, innovative things, and it might make sense for wherever you live to connect with that group of folks.
Where would you find that information?
On the Burning Man website, burningman.org. You can
burningman.org.
search
Okay.
your location and get contact info for the closest
Okay.
contacts near you.
Super.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Katie.
Yeah, thank you,
It's been
Sue.
delightful
It's really
chatting
nice
with
to
you.
talk with you. Thanks.
I'm Susan Gardner for Municipal World. We share your stories.